Greetings humans on the internet. This is
Marijuana guy.
And today I'm going to be giving a brief overview and analysis of Kamaru Usman versus Gilbert Burns, going over the relevant strengths and weaknesses, as well as their potential paths to victory. This is a very interesting matchup because out of all the current fighters in title contention, Gilbert Burns, at least on paper, gives the champion the most problems. Before we get into the actual breakdown though, I just want to give a huge shout out to the sponsor of this video, Raid Shadow Legend. Starting off with the champion Kamaru Usman. He is first and foremost an elite wrestler. Usman is an NCAA Division II wrestler who transitioned his skills very well over to MMA. He has excellent single legs as well as body lock takedowns against the cage, and when he does get you down, his top control is absolutely smothering. He's a big fan of riding the opponent, making them carry his weight and constantly breaking their posture as they're trying to stand back up. Next is length. Standing at 183 centimeters with a reach of 193 centimeters, he utilizes his length to a great extent, not only in the clinch, but also in his boxing. He has a solid 1-2 combination which he uses to pressure fighters against the fence or keep them at bay. And in the clinch, he's shown a great ability to use his entire reach to dig for underhooks, maneuver the opponent, or just take them down. This will be a great advantage for Usman, as Gilbert almost always starts his fight by sitting on the outside and throwing kicks. Cardio. It's well known by now that Usman has one of the best gas tanks in the UFC, being able to go a hard 5 rounds against Colby Covington at a frantic pace and barely look tired at the end of it. This could potentially be his most potent weapon versus Gilbert Burns, as in the past, Gilbert has shown to slow down and fatigue. One might point at Gilbert's performance against Tyron Woodley, where he was able to pressure Woodley and keep it up for 25 minutes, but as I see it, Woodley didn't do much to keep off the pressure and allowed Gilbert to control the pace of the fight and dictate it as he pleased. That's actually a common theme among Burns' most recent opponents. Guys like Alexei Kunchenko, Gunnar Nelson, and Tyron Woodley are all primarily counter-strikers who like to sit back patiently and wait for an opportunity to attack. Lastly, he has solid knockout power. Usman carries a lot of power in his right hand, particularly in his right straight, which is by far his most devastating strike, and the one he used to drop Colby Covington, Demian Maia, and KO Sergio Moraes. Moving over to Gilbert Burns' strengths, he has a respectable offensive wrestling game, especially in the clinch against the cage. Burns has been able to take down and even control credentialed grapplers like Alexei Kunchenko, Tyron Woodley, and Gunnar Nelson. He is particularly fond of reaping the opponent's legs in the clinch, but has also shown some explosive reactive double legs. Notice though how I said offensive wrestling. Unfortunately, his defensive wrestling is a bit lacking. Burns is quite good at defending penetration shots from a distance, but in the clinch, he's shown some issues, especially when it comes to his balance and foot placement. I believe, however, that this will work to his advantage in this matchup because of his elite Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. With a second-degree black belt in BJJ, a bronze medal in the Abu Dhabi World Championships, numerous gold medals in IBJJF World Tournaments, as well as 8 submission wins to his record, it's not a secret that Burns is an elite Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu grappler. This, in my opinion, is Gilbert's biggest advantage over Usman, as it will not only make Usman hesitant to engage with Gilbert on the ground, but it will also allow him to use his entire arsenal of strikes that could otherwise compromise him for a takedown, such as his knees and his kicks. Burns has a very solid kicking game, both from the inside and the outside. In this matchup, Burns will be able to use his kicks freely and to great effect, as he likely won't be worried about the takedowns of Usman. He has a particularly devastating outside calf kick, which has shown to make fighters wary after only a few of them. He also likes to follow this up with a lead overhand / hook, which seems to be his fastest and most effective punch that he used to hurt guys like Tyron Woodley, as well as Demian Maia. This could be a very dangerous weapon against Usman, as he stands very tall and doesn't move his head all that much. Burns could exploit this by baiting a right straight from the champ and countering him with his left hook, like he did in his fight with Maya. Finally, we have his speed and power. Moving up from lightweight, Burns has been able to bring that speed and explosiveness with him. This is not only apparent in his strikes and ability to close the distance on his opponents, but also his grappling. I believe in this matchup, Burns will have the speed advantage and will allow him to better close the distance and land his offense. So to recap, Usman will have the advantage in wrestling. He's the more skilled wrestler, and because he's a natural welterweight, he is likely going to be physically stronger than Gilbert in the clinch. Gilbert, however, will have a definitive advantage on the ground. He's a decorated BJJ practitioner and will be a lot more confident in that area than Usman. This leads us to the last aspect of the fight, which is the striking. And in my opinion, Gilbert Burns will have an overall advantage in this area. For starters, Gilbert has a far more varied striking arsenal with his straight punches, hooks, knees, and kicks, whereas Usman is primarily a boxer and tends to only stick to his jab and powerful right straight. He has shown, however, to have a decent front snap kick to the body, which could indicate that there's more to his arsenal than once thought. Gilbert's striking will also be further amplified by his speed, along with his advantage on the ground, which will nullify the takedown threat of Usman. So the overall advantage goes to Burns. That doesn't mean, however, that he will win. I believe this fight could go down in two different scenarios. Scenario 1. Usman takes the center of the octagon and immediately establishes his pressure. He evades or defends the leg kicks of Gilbert and clinches with him against the cage. From here, he will use his superior wrestling and physicality to control Gilbert and dirty box, accumulating strikes and control time, ultimately winning via decision. There is one huge caveat to this scenario, however, and that's if Mark Goddard is refereeing the fight.
And over again, and this will absolutely pay dividends in the later rounds. This is going to...
He's mixed in those shoulder strikes as well.
Why are they separated?
I don't understand
that. I do not understand that. And
this fourth round of a possible 5, you see the control time for Kamaru Usman, and
Scenario 2. Burns uses his footwork to stay off the cage and out of the clinch, whilst chopping at Usman with his kicks from a distance. At some point in the fight, Usman might start getting desperate, which will lead him to either enter uncautiously or go for a desperation takedown. Either way, he'll likely get finished right then and there. If not, Burns will point fight him to a decision victory or possibly finish him with a blitz of punches. I think Burns will inevitably get tired in the later rounds from the constant pressure of Usman, probably losing rounds 4 and 5, but as long as he won the previous rounds dominantly, I think he'll be good. Now, there is one huge X factor to consider, and that's that Kamaru Usman has switched camps for this fight and is currently training with Trevor Whitman and his team at Grudge Training Center, so it's possible that he comes out with some new weapons or tactics that we haven't seen from him before. I also think the fact that he's training with Trevor Whitman, who specializes in striking, tells me that he's probably not looking to grapple with Burns whatsoever, which I think is ill-advised for reasons stated earlier. All in all, I see almost all the advantages going to Burns. His proficiency on the ground is going to deter Usman from engaging with him there, and he has a more dangerous and varied striking arsenal, which I think will lead him to a decision victory, if not a stoppage at some point in the fight. Now, as for the rest of the card, Volkanovski versus Holloway is a very close fight, but I'm gonna go with Volkanovski. I think he's a slightly more technical striker, and I think he has Holloway's game figured out pretty well. Jose Aldo versus Peter Yan. I think Aldo is the superior striker, and I don't see Yan being able to get his wrestling going, so I see Aldo winning at least 2 out of 3 rounds and getting the decision victory. Jessica Andrade versus Rose Namajunas. Now, assuming that Rose is mentally prepared and stable, I see this fight being either a second round stoppage or a full 3-round beatdown. Andrade is probably the most plodding fighter I've ever seen in my life. She walks her opponents down, throws big looping strikes, never really moves her head, never really cuts off the cage. And say what you want, but I think their first fight was a fluke. In their first fight, Andrade was really just a setting target, getting teed off on by Rose, and she even got knocked down at one point in the fight. So I'm definitely going with Rose on this one. Ozdemir versus Jiri. Both these guys are extremely powerful and the fight could end at any given second, but I think Volkan's wrestling is going to be the key factor in this fight. Volkan trains with some very high-level grapplers, such as Gilbert Burns, Michael Chandler, Nick Lenz, and Kamaru Usman. I think Jiri is probably going to enter this fight expecting a kickboxing match, but if Volkan mixes up his striking and his wrestling, I see him winning this fight. Lastly, we have Zaleski dos Santos versus Muslim Salikov. So Zaleski is primarily a striker. He is also a BJJ black belt, which is going to be the biggest problem for Salikov, as he doesn't have much of a ground game. Salikov, however, is a very powerful, decorated stand-up fighter with pretty good takedown defense. So I think he's going to defend any takedowns coming his way, and I see him knocking Zaleski out, probably in the first or second round. So that was it for the breakdown, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments about what you think of these fights, and I'll see you the next time I decide to upload a fucking video. Through cosmic darkness, triumph waits out from its realm of birth, keen to suffle on its prey, that wretched place called Earth.